Hello, Man in Gray here with another Man in Gray book review. Today's books are Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation, the Foundation Trilogy by Isaac Asimov. These books were originally published in 1951, 1952, and 1953. This edition, published in one volume by Everman Classics, was published in 2010. It contains, in addition to the three novels, a lengthy introduction by Michael Dirda, a timeline of Asimov's life, and a bibliography. It's 612 pages long. Isaac Asimov was a prolific writer who was born in 1920 in Russia and who moved to the United States as a child and died in 1992. During his lifetime, he wrote or edited an amazing 504 books, mostly science fiction or popular science books, but he also wrote books on the Bible, Shakespeare, books of limericks, joke books, books on word origin, murder mysteries, and thousands of magazine articles. But far and away, his most popular and influential books were these three books written as a series of magazine excerpts in a pulp science fiction magazine in the late 1940s and 1950s. The origin of the Foundation Trilogy began with a meeting that Asimov had in the late 1940s with John Campbell, the editor of Astounding Magazine, which was a popular science fiction magazine of the time. Campbell told Asimov that he wanted him to write a series of stories about the fall of the Roman Empire, only set in the future on different worlds. And so what Asimov came up with was a brilliant idea to connect all these stories together. He came up with this made-up science called psychohistory. In psychohistory, mathematicians use equations to predict the future based on the behavior of large groups of people, kind of like statistical analysis. And technically, these three books are not actually novels. The first book is a collection of interconnected short stories, and the other two volumes contain two novellas each, which are sandwiched together. But they're all connected by this idea of psychohistory. In the first book, Foundation, a psychohistorian named Hari Seldon, who lives on Trantor, which is the capital planet of the Galactic Empire. Seldon, using his mathematical equations, realizes to his horror that the Galactic Empire is going to collapse in about 100 years. And after that, there's going to be tens of thousands of years of barbarism and chaos as various kings and princes and dictators fight each other for power. And he realizes there's nothing he can do to stop the empire from falling. But he knows that using psychohistory, he can reduce the time of the Dark Ages to a single 1,000-year period. So instead of having tens of thousands of years of violence and chaos, it'll only be 1,000. And the way he does this is he sets up two groups of scientists, which he calls foundations, and they're on opposite ends of the galaxy. The first foundation is devoted to preserving and developing technology. And the second foundation, whose location and whose members are kept secret, is on the other end of the galaxy, and they're all have psychic abilities, the ability to read minds and control emotions and thoughts. And working independently, these two foundations are going to force the masses into following a plan, which is the Seldon plan, to restore the galaxy's empire after 1,000 years. Now, the first volume is concerned with attacks on the first foundation. The first foundation is set up in a tiny planet on the far end of the galaxy called Terminus, and they are technologically advanced, but they're very weak militarily. And so nearby governments on nearby planets try to conquer the Foundation so that they can get their technology. And that book involves how the first Foundation is able to fight off all these different threats to its existence. In the second book, the first novella deals with an attack by the Galactic Empire itself. The Galactic Empire is dying, but the core of the empire is still together, and one of the generals of the Galactic Empire hears about the Foundation and realizes, when he's told what they're up to, he says, well, I've got to stop this because they're going to try to take over the galaxy and take over the Galactic Empire. So he leads an expedition directly to the First Foundation and tries to attack them. And that story is how the First Foundation fends off the Galactic Empire. In the second novella, there's a mutant who arises whose name is the Mule. He's nicknamed the Mule. And he's a mutant who has psychic abilities, much like the people on the Second Foundation. He's able to read minds and also control emotions. And using his psychic powers, he's bent on conquering the entire galaxy. And when he hears about the Foundation, he decides to attack it. And he succeeds. Temporarily, he's able to conquer the first Foundation. But when he finds out that there's a second Foundation made up of people just like him, he realizes they're the real threat. And so he goes on a search to try to find them and destroy them. In the third novel, Second Foundation, the first novella is when the mule finally meets up with members of the Second Foundation, and they have an epic psychic battle for who controls the galaxy. And then in the final novella in Second Foundation, after the mule dies, the first Foundation is reestablished, and they also decide to go after and try to find and destroy the Second Foundation because they believe that these mind-controlled people are controlling them. And so they have to stop them before their Second Foundation takes over the whole universe, the whole galaxy. And so that's the basic idea behind this. And underneath all of these various battles and wars and stuff, there's the psychohistory running in the background. Harry Seldon's plan is running, and the other people are oblivious to it, but underneath it all, the Seldon plan, as it's called, is going on, much like a computer program running in the background of a computer while you're watching playing video games or watching videos or whatever. There's a program running underneath there. So that's what happens there. So, as I said at the beginning, this was a very influential book series when it came out in the early 1950s. And the reason for that is, well, for one thing, it was a big bestseller. These books have never gone out of print, which is rare for early science fiction books. A lot of the early science fiction books were popular at the time and fell out of popularity and were out of print, but these books have never gone out of print. And they're influential because they showed other science fiction writers and especially publishers that there was a market for multi-volume science fiction epics involving long periods of time, hundreds of years, and dozens of characters. And these are sometimes referred to as space operas. So the Foundation Trilogy showed that there was a market for that. And so a lot of other science fiction writers began writing these massive, ambitious, multi-volume science fiction epics. One of the writers who was really influenced by Asimov was Frank Herbert, whose series of Dune novels has also become very popular and very influential. Two movies based on that book series. Almost 30 years after Asimov finished these three books, he took up his pen again and wrote 4 more Foundation books. So the whole thing is actually a set of 7. There's 2 prequels and 2 sequels to the original Foundation Trilogy. But to use an analogy from Star Wars, a lot of people who loved the first 3 Star Wars movies in the 70s and 80s, when the prequels came out in the 90s and 2000s, they thought the prequels were pretty much inferior to the original 3. And that's kind of the way I feel about the 4 additional Foundation books that Asimov wrote in the 1980s. They're good, but they're nowhere near as good as these 3 books that Asimov wrote as a young man. So if you look at this book and you say, well, gosh, it's awfully long and you're intimidated by it, I should let you know that these books are really quick reads. Because Asimov wrote in a very easy, very accessible style. There's long passages of conversation, so in some places it looks almost like a play, where you got people talking for long periods of time. It's very easy to read, and it's very engaging, and there's a reason why these books have remained popular for so long. The books are Foundation and Empire, and Second Foundation. The author is Isaac Asimov, and this has been another Man in Gray book review. Thanks for watching.